It's a birthday party you thought would be fun. Colorful balloons everywhere, loud music playing, kids running around, adults chatting animatedly, the sweet smell of cake mixed with hot food in the air. Your child stands next to you for the first few minutes. Then you notice a change. They cover their ears. Their face tightens. They cling to your hand. You think, maybe they're just shy. You say, it's okay, it's fun. But a few minutes later, your child bursts into tears. Not soft crying, but piercing screams, loud, intense. Their body stiffens. When you try to hug them, they pull away. When you try to soothe them, it's as if they can't even hear you. People around you start looking. You begin to feel embarrassed. But what's happening may not be that your child is difficult. It may be sensory overload. And here's the most important thing to remember. Sensory overload is not defiance. It's the nervous system reacting to being flooded with too much stimulation at once. Imagine a child's brain like a control panel. Loud noises, bright lights, unfamiliar smells. The feeling of clothes rubbing against their skin. All of it flooding in at once. When the input exceeds their tolerance threshold, the nervous system can no longer regulate itself. And the reaction can be intense. One of the clearest signs is a meltdown. A meltdown is not the same as a tantrum. In a tantrum, the child still has some level of control. But in a meltdown, control is lost. The explosion doesn't stop just because the child gets what they want. Let's go back to the party. You take your child to a quiet corner. You promise to leave early, but they're still crying. Still trembling, still breathing rapidly. Because at this point, it's no longer about the cake or the gift. The issue is that the nervous system is overloaded. A meltdown is not a strategy. A meltdown is a distress signal. There are moments when a child screams and cries for a long time, seemingly unaware of the people around them. You call their name. You try to comfort them. But their eyes don't focus. It's as if their ears have shut down. They are not deliberately ignoring you. Their brain is busy trying to cope with stress. When the nervous system shifts into survival mode, the ability to listen, think, and communicate becomes limited, and that can leave many parents feeling helpless. If you've ever experienced that moment, know that you're not alone. And if this is helping you understand your child more clearly, you might want to save it to revisit later, especially on the days when everything feels overwhelming. But not every overwhelmed child explodes outwardly. Some children withdraw instead. You might notice your child suddenly becoming unusually quiet. Their eyes look distant. Their body seems limp. They don't respond when you call their name. It's like a switch has been turned off. This is also a protective response. When stimulation becomes too intense, the nervous system may freeze to protect itself. A child may disconnect from their emotions and even from their body to reduce the pressure. So don't assume that overload only shows up as screaming. Unusual silence can be a sign too. Another sign is extreme sensitivity to small stimuli. The faint buzzing of fluorescent lights that you barely notice. A clothing tag rubbing against the skin. The smell of food in the room. Things that feel normal to adults can be intensely uncomfortable for a child. You may have heard your child say, "This shirt is so itchy," and you think, it's just a tag. But for a sensitive nervous system, that sensation can feel like being scratched over and over again. When a small discomfort repeats continuously, the brain struggles to process it, and pressure gradually builds. At some point, it only takes one additional small trigger, and the meltdown erupts. You might also notice repetitive behaviors like rocking back and forth, covering ears, or tightly shutting the eyes. These are not strange behaviors. They may be self-regulation strategies. When stimulation becomes overwhelming, a child may try to reduce input by covering their ears, closing their eyes, or creating repetitive movement to stabilize their body. In more severe cases, a child may engage in self-injurious behaviors, such as hitting their head or biting themselves. This is a clear signal that the nervous system is in significant overload. Here's what's crucial to understand. When a child is overwhelmed, their ability to communicate drops dramatically. You might ask, "What's wrong?" And they don't respond, not because they don't want to speak, but because they can't. The brain is busy managing stress. It no longer has enough resources to express thoughts in words. When you understand this, you change how you respond. Instead of demanding that your child use their words, you reduce stimulation first. Move them to a quiet space. Dim the lights. Turn off the music. Keep your voice low and slow. In that moment, your calmness matters most. Your child's nervous system needs to borrow your stability. And if you notice these signs happening frequently, especially in children with ASD, ADHD, or sensory processing challenges, seeking support from a qualified professional is important. These children often have more sensitive nervous systems than average. That doesn't mean they're weak. It simply means their threshold for stimulation is lower. Understanding this allows you to adjust the environment instead of trying to change the child. If you're raising a sensitive child, you're doing a very challenging job, and you deserve support. If this helps you see things more clearly, consider sharing it with another parent who may be blaming themselves for not understanding what's happening. Sensory overload is not your child's fault, and it's not your fault either. It's the interaction between the nervous system and the environment. When you recognize early signs like covering ears, facial tension, or withdrawal, you can step in before a full meltdown erupts. That's the power of observation. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with my child?" ask, "Is this environment too much for them right now?" A small adjustment, lowering the volume, leaving the crowd earlier, choosing softer clothing can make a significant difference. And here's the final thing to remember. During overload, a child doesn't need a lecture. They need safety. Once the nervous system settles, everything else can follow. If you'd like to keep learning practical, science-based ways to support sensory-sensitive children, follow along so you don't miss the next content. Because sometimes the biggest shift isn't in a child's behavior, it's in how we choose to see it.